मौज में है इरफान का सागर, पीर करम शाह जिंदाबाद, फैज़ मुसलसल रहमत दावर, पीर करम शाह जिंदाबाद, हुस्न करम आई नए दिलों में.
We're going to continue. Yesterday we got as far as breaking the rocks and discovering the diamonds. And we started clearing the dust off the diamonds. Inshallah, what we want to do today is we want to polish those diamonds and we put them in the cabinets where they should be. So we were classifying diamonds as of yesterday. We went through 2 or 3 conditions, inshallah, to continue that and reach the end few conditions, and inshallah for the final words. I'd like to call upon my colleague, Hafiz Atar Hussain Al-Azhari. Nare Takbeer, Nare Risalat.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Amma ba'd. Respected ulama karam, brothers and sisters in Islam. Inshallah ta'ala, we will get straight into the presentation and we will try to continue where we left off from yesterday. I think it is beneficial that I spend just a few moments on recapping on what we've actually covered so far. So that will make coming into this session much easier for us all. Very briefly, yesterday's presentation, the aim behind it was to identify and give you an idea of what constitutes a Sahih Hadith. So to begin with, we started with a definition of what a Hadith is exactly. And what we said was it's something which is ascribed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. And I hope you will remember that we said that this can take on 4 different forms. So the Hadith of the Prophet can take on 4 different forms. The sayings of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, the actions of our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the sifas or the attributes or the descriptions, the shamail of our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and then finally we talked about the silent approval. When something is done in the presence of our Prophet, he doesn't object to it. And then the fact that he doesn't object to it is an indication that that act is allowed and it is part of Sharia. Then when it came to the Sahih Hadith itself, we said that what we will do is we'll give an actual example of a Sahih Hadith, and then we will break it down and then talk how that actually reached that status. And the Hadith we took to analyze was the report recorded by Sayyidina Anas, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من والده وولده والناس أجمعين. What we said is that this Hadith Sharif was said by the Prophet ﷺ and eventually recorded by Imam Bukhari. Imam Bukhari died in the middle of the 3rd Islamic century. So there's obviously a gap, a very large gap, that needs to be covered. How could he be so sure that the Prophet said that such a long time ago? For that, and in order to cover this potential problem, the ulama karam introduced this idea of the Sunnat, the chain, which is a chain of transmission of men, whereby each and individual person verifies and acknowledges that he heard it from his teacher, who heard it from his teacher, until we come to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. This was the first condition of a Sahih Hadith. That this chain of people, it has to be continuous. It has to be muttasil, what we say, meaning connected with that. The fact that they have met one another, however, was not sufficient. And what we said then is, as part of the second condition of a Sahih Hadith, is that we must have some indication that the people carrying the message, they are trustworthy, good, pious Muslims. And we call this the adala, the adl of the reporters in question. They had to be pious, they had to be Muslims, they had to be mature, they had to be free from fisq, bad behavior. They should be, in general, courteous, gentleman type people. Each and every narrator would go through those checks, but we made an exception to this rule. And the exception to that rule was the companions, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. Then we came to the accuracy of the reporters. that these people, and this is the third condition of a Sahih report, that the people who report it now, they must be accurate in the sense that whatever they heard, they pass it on in exactly the same manner. They do not distort the words, they do not distort or change the message given to them by their shaykh, and when they pass it on to their own students. This is where we got to so far. And the last point that we mentioned was we referred to how so much of the information and so much of the authenticity of a Sahih Hadith depends on the men reporting it, the people featured in the chain. And the last point that we mentioned yesterday evening was that this led to what we call the Ilm al-Rijal literature. Whereas each an individual reporter, a who's who account would be created, where we would list all of the possible information about that person. This is where we will continue today. So today then, what I would like to start with is to give you examples of such works where we can find out the minutest detail of all of the reporters that have taken part in hadith transmission. And I've given you only 3 examples on the board there. Number 1, At-Tabaqatul Kubra, also called Tabaqat ibn Sa'd. And this is a 3rd century work in which Ibn Sa'd, he lists the biography in detail of over 4,000 hadith reporters. A very large piece of work, a voluminous piece of work in which he covers the details of all of the hadith reporters. Mizanul I'tidal by Imam Zahabi, an 8th century scholar, 11,000 reporters covered in that work. Tahzib al-Tahzib, which I think I showed you yesterday, the first one of the volumes of it. This is one of 8 or 9 volumes. And again, this is the 9th century work. This covers over 4,000 reporters as well, where you will be given the detail of when they were born, when they passed away, where did they travel to, so that it makes it easier for us to identify the authenticity of a hadith. Now we come to the 4th condition of a Sahih report. So far we've mentioned the continuation of the chain, the integrity, adala of the reporters, and then we also talked about the accuracy of the reporters. We're going to mention 2 more conditions, so there's 5 overall. So we now come to the 4th condition. The 4th condition for a Sahih hadith is that of seniority. Meaning what? You respect your elders. You respect those people who have more authority and who have more wisdom and knowledge than you. This is the 4th condition of a Sahih hadith. In life, we normally respect authority and seniority anyway. If there's something wrong with my car, then I might take an opinion of you. I will respect that. But it would be better for me to take it from someone who is more learned about my car, who actually might have built it in the first place, who works as a mechanic. Imagine now, for example, somebody was to ask me a fiqh question, and I was to give you an answer. Later, you were to ask the same question to Qibla Pisa, for example. He gives you a different answer. The same question, but 2 different answers, one stemming from myself and one stemming from Qibla Pisa. In all honesty, you're going to buy the opinion of Qibla Pisa, aren't you? Because he is older, he is more wise, he is more learned and more experienced. Taking nothing away from me, but the fact is that he's more reliable, isn't he? The exact same idea applies in this field as well in hadith. That when a person reports a hadith, then what we are going to do is we are going to check it with what other people have reported. If a reliable person narrates in one particular way, but someone who is more reliable, he reports it somewhat differently, we take the opinion of the one who is more reliable. That hadith which we accept now, we call mahfuz, which means protected, preserved. It comes from the word hifz. And then the one that we have unfortunately rejected, that is called shaz, which means rare and solitary. So this is the 4th condition of a Sahih hadith, that it has to be checked against those more senior reporters in that. Now with this hadith that we are examining, La yu'minu ahadukum, I can't actually put that into there. So I'm going to give you another example, a practical example of how a reporter who is reliable has reported something only to be outclassed, you could say, by someone who is more reliable. There's a reporter called Abdullah ibn Ziyad. Abdullah ibn Ziyad, Abdul Wahid bin Ziyad. Abdul Wahid bin Ziyad, he reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِذَا صَلَّى أَحَدُكُمْ الْفَجْرَ فَلْيَتَّجِعْ عَنْ يَمِينِهِ. That when you perform Fajr prayer, after performing it and when you decide to lay down, then lie down on your right hand side. This is the hadith that Abdul Wahid bin Ziyad reported. Abdul Wahid bin Ziyad is a perfectly good reporter. He is reliable. He is accurate. But it just so happens that what he has reported goes against the report and transmission of those people who are more reliable. So we are going to reject what Abdul Wahid bin Ziyad said. Why are the others more reliable? Abdul Wahid is explaining that the Prophet ﷺ said these words, meaning it is a hadith qawli. The more reliable reporters, they said that the Prophet ﷺ did not say these words, rather it was his actions, meaning it was a hadith fi'li. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا صلى الفجر اتجع عن يمينه. That he used to do that. He used to lie down on his right hand side. So this is an example where we give preference to the one who is more reliable. His hadith is now called mahfuz. The rejected one now is called shaz. This is the fourth condition of a sahih hadith. Seniority in essence. We respect those figures who are more learned and more wise than ourselves. Finally, we come to the fifth and final condition of a sahih hadith. After checking through these visible mistakes that could come across, what the ulama ikram and the great hadith masters would do is to check whether there were no other hidden problems manifesting itself in that hadith sharif. So in essence, this last one here was checking for any other mistakes not covered in the four above mentioned conditions. To check whether a person, for example, is not trying to pass off a saying of the companions as the sayings of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. If there is a hidden problem in a hadith, then we say that there is an illah in that report. And the hadith is now called mu'allal. So this final condition is basically, it's almost like a disclaimer. Anything not covered in the above four conditions, we will try to incorporate in this as well. Once a hadith fulfills those conditions, only then will it be given the highest grade of hadith authentication, which is sahih. So this final one, therefore, is just covering the backs of the ulama to ensure that they have not missed anything out. Now we are finally in a position now to give you the full definition of what is a sahih hadith. What is a sahih hadith? ما اتصل سنده بنقل العدل تام الضبط عن مثله إلى منتهى من غير شذوذ ولا علة. It is a hadith where the chain is continuous, ittisal, with the transmission of just accurate narrators from beginning to end. What does it mean by beginning to end? It means that you have to find those qualities in not just one reporter, you have to find them in all of the reporters. Without the hadith being shaz, meaning the seniority rule, and without it having a hidden defect in it whatsoever. Now we have the actual definition of a sahih hadith. Was that enough for the scholars, however? After coming across a sahih hadith, and Imam Bukhari, for example, listing that hadith sharif now in his work, was that sufficient for them? It wasn't. What the hadith masters would then do is that they would try to find supporting evidence to authenticate each particular hadith. This would be in the form of finding alternative chains of transmission different to the original one. Why? Because that adds to the value and adds to the content that this report is certainly true. A simple example. Just imagine that I heard from Hafiz Gul Sahib that P Sahib is coming to the spiritual retreat. That's reliable for me, and that's sufficient for me. And I might look into the fact that, well, he's from Peterborough, and I've heard this news from Peterborough now. Just imagine now that I hear it from Qari Khalid Sahib as well now. That same piece of news, that P Sahib is coming to the spiritual camp. It adds now to my content that this news certainly is true and it will happen. He's from a different area now. Now I hear from Brother Shahid Sahib as well from High Wycombe. I hear it from somewhere else. I hear it from some from Jamia as well, from the Glasgow people, from the Cheshire people. The fact that I am hearing it from different sources now, the same piece of information, what is it doing to me? It's giving me that guarantee that this is not something which coincidentally they are all saying the same thing. It's giving me that guarantee that they're not colluding on a lie, for example. That certainly this piece of information that was given to me originally by Hafsab, it does have some background to it. In exactly the same way, the Hadith masters, what they would do is take the Hadith of the Prophet. None of you is a true believer until I am more beloved to him. They would have the chain for it, but then they would say, no, we're going to find another chain of transmission for it. So now we will have no doubt whatsoever that certainly the Prophet ﷺ, he said these words. Very quickly, then I will go through this example. This is the original example that I gave to you. Remember, we looked at this side here. So just have a quick remember of these names. You've got Yaqub bin Ibrahim, Ismail bin Ibrahim, Abdul Aziz bin Suhaib, and Anas at the top. Whose report is this? Imam Bukhari's report. And in the Sunnat, the matan, of the hadith is exactly the same. La yu'minu ahadukum. This is now Imam Muslim's version. Imam Muslim has recorded exactly the same hadith sharif. The same news, you could say, that Pisab is coming. But now he's heard it from a different path now. Imam Muslim, at the bottom there, he heard it from two sources, Muhammad bin Musanna and Muhammad bin Bashar. They heard it from Muhammad bin Jafar. Muhammad bin Jafar did not feature in Imam Bukhari's chain, who then heard it from Shu'bah, from Qatada, and then from Anas. This is Imam Muslim's version. Then you have Imam Nasa'i's version. Imam Nasa'i reports exactly the same hadith sharif. His chain of narration is different as well. He heard it from Humayd, who heard it from Bishr bin Mufaddal, from Shu'bah, from Qatada, from Anas. It's adding to your content, isn't it? That these people have made their own investigations, aside to what Imam Bukhari did, and they still reached the same result, still heard exactly the same words, La yu'minu ahadukum. Then we have the version of Imam Ahmad, rahmatullahi alayhi wa radiyallahu an, the earliest of the scholars. His chain and his report is different as well. You've got Hajjaj there as well. Again, you can see, however, that by finding these examples, by finding this supporting evidence, then it adds to our content and comfort that certainly the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, he said these words. Very briefly then, as to finish off and to conclude this presentation, a few matters which I think are important to highlight. Some miscellaneous facts and figures, perhaps, about a Sahih Hadith. Why is Sahih al Bukhari so respected? The example that I gave to you was from the works of Imam Bukhari. You have heard time and time again the rank of this individual scholar and of his works as well. Why is he so respected? Number one, Sahih al Bukhari is the first compilation of ahadith purely for the Sahih only. What does that mean? Well, scholars before Imam Bukhari were writing books and compiling books of hadith as well. The likes of Imam Malik, for example, the works, the Musnad of Imam Azam, Imam Abu Hanifa, the Muwatta of Imam Malik, the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. But prior to this, people were just compiling all types of ahadith. And the purpose was just try to preserve the sayings of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. When it came to the middle of the 3rd century, for Imam Bukhari, now his intention was to have a compilation just for the Sahih, for the highest grades of ahadith possible. So that is why we say that the ahadith, the reports to be found in this work, they are of the highest standard. And it is on that basis that you will hear our scholars say that after the Quran Sharif, the most reliable book that we have is the Sahih of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. In terms of authenticity and in terms of knowing that the source is certainly true. And this is purely because he was a brilliant scholar, he was a brilliant academic. He had an amazing memory, something that you will learn about in a moment. And he was such a pious and great individual. But it's important to note as well, Imam Bukhari, a great academic, a great thinker, a great person who had an amazing memory, yet he was also a great Muslim as well. And when it came to his investigations and academia, he didn't just depend on primary sources and the empirical evidence in front of him. He also depended on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He depended on the spiritual as well. When Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi, when he was searching for the ahadith and gathering the evidence so that he could compile this work, he traveled throughout the Islamic world. He went to the Hijaz, Makkah, he went to Egypt, he went to Basra, he went to Kufa, he went to so many different areas. When it came to actually writing the works now, of all of the places that he could have chosen, remember he was a resident of Central Asia, he could have sat there. Of all of the areas he chose to write up the final copy now of his works, he chose the final resting place of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina Sharif. And he sat there. Each and every report that he included in Sahih al Bukhari in his works, first and foremost he would perform ghusl. He would put on his best clothes and apply perfume. Then he would perform istikhara prayer, meaning requesting that this is correct from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only then he would present himself to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Only then would he insert that hadith into his works. So this shows, and perhaps it's a lesson for you and I as well, that you depend on the academic, you depend on the spiritual as well. That, when you go into an important exam, you have an important, university exam tomorrow, there's two ways you can do it. Either the night before, you spend all of the night revising, and you don't pray at all for assistance. That's wrong. Or the second option is that you don't do any revision whatsoever, and you sit on the musalla and you read 100 rakats, and you're doing dua all the time. Ya Allah, give me success in this exam. That's wrong as well. The thing that you really should be doing is mixing both. That you depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You pray to Him, He's going to give you the assistance in the exam. But you make the preparations as well, and you read the revision notes as well. And this is exactly what Imam Bukhari taught us to do. Go through the research, that painstaking process of research and investigation behind each and every reporter to find out whether it is connected, they are accurate. Yet at the same time depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many ahadith are there in Sahih al Bukhari? Overall, the number is just above 7,000. When you take out the repetitions, meaning that one hadith has sometimes been recorded in several places in the works, it comes to about 4,000. However, how many did Imam Bukhari himself know? He knew much more than that. He knew 300,000 ahadith, of which 100,000 was sahih. Now when I say he knew the hadith, he didn't just know لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه. He didn't just know إنما الأعمال بالنيات من يرد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. He knew the chain for it as well. The Sunnat, that list of names. Easily, we have our ulama here between us, we could read off 1,000 ahadith to you by heart. With great difficulty, I don't think so, we could read off 10 ahadith when we mention the Sunnat as well. It's very, very difficult to remember the names. It's impossible. Imam Bukhari knew the Sunnat and the matan of each and every of these 300,000. So it shows how great his memory was. A question arises from here, that if he knew so many ahadith, 100,000 sahih hadith, why did he only include 7,000 in his works? Why are there so little in that? Imam Bukhari himself states that the reason why I only included this small number is because I wanted to keep the work short. I feared that it would become too long. For those who have seen, especially the Muhammad Mohsin Khan version, Sahih al Bukhari in its English version is about 7 volumes, 8, 9 volumes. And this is only 7,000 reports. Imagine if it was 100,000. From this as well, it's very, very important that you understand. A lot of the time you will hear the people from the Salafi Wahhabi background who love Sahih al Bukhari, which is a good thing. But they overdo it and they say, we are only going to accept an opinion, only going to accept evidence if it stems from Sahih al Bukhari. If you quoted the hadith from any other lesser works, we don't want to know about it. You think for yourself now that does this comply with what Imam Bukhari set out to do? It doesn't. Imam Bukhari himself, who is the author of this work, Imam Bukhari himself said that I am not going to include everything which is Sahih, that this is only a small selection of my knowledge on the actual authentic sayings of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So on that basis, we should keep in mind that when Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, when he records a hadith, then it means it's Sahih. Not to say that this is the only place where we can find authentic sayings of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Which leads us to this next very important point. Where can we find other Sahih reports from? Bukhari is obvious. Number two, Sahih Muslim, written by Imam Muslim bin Hajjaj, who was a student of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. Together, Bukhari and Muslim, they are considered the most authentic sayings of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. You might hear the term Sahihain. It refers to the works of Bukhari and Muslims. You might sometimes hear the term Muttafaqun alayh, which means agreed upon, a terminology which means basically that Imam Bukhari and Muslim have reported this hadith sharif. Where else? You can find Sahih hadith from the works of Imam Tirmizi rahmatullahi alayh, Sunan al-Tirmizi, Sunan Ibn Majah, Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan al-Nisa'i. So we have 5 there, and then we have Bukhari as well. Collectively, these 6 pieces of work are sometimes referred to as Siha'u Sitta, or the 6 Sahih. So collectively, the 2 highest ranks were Bukhari and Muslim. Those next 4, along with these 2, 6 together, they make up the highest authority in terms of hadith reports. Then you have other works as well, the Muwatta of Imam Malik, which includes sayings from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Imam Malik's own sayings, and the practices of the people of Medina Sharif. Sunan al-Bayhaqi, Musnad Ahmad bin Hanbal, over 15,000 reports, ahadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in this work as well. To conclude then, what I have tried to do basically is, it is a very complex area, and I have only given you a very short introduction to what ilm hadith is really about. Is that I wanted to, and I hope I have been successful in that, is to show you and try to give you an impression of the exactitude, the precaution, and the objectivity that the hadith masters employed when it came to recording the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That they left no corner uncut. They checked everything. And there's a lot of aspects of it I haven't even covered in this speech here. When it came to, for example, passing on their information, the scholars would even note what word they used to pass on that information. Did he say, qala such and such, or did he say, sami'tu such and such? These are the kind of exactitude that they showed, something that perhaps we will go into in some other time. It shows their care for the words of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. And what I hope that you will appreciate, that the standard of a Sahih hadith is so high, and it's so rigid, and it's so exact, that what it means is that the lesser standards after Sahih, Hasan and thereafter Da'if, even in many situations, they are acceptable